another episode of VancouverReal. My name is Mike Zaremba, and as always with me is my brother Andy.
Hey guys, how's it going?
And Mr. Omid behind the scenes. Hello. And we are broadcasting here at a float house down in Gastown in Vancouver, BC. And if you don't know what Float House is a sensory deprivation and flotation center. We have 2 locations in Vancouver, one in Gastown, one in Kitsilano. And Andy, why don't you tell the people what is floating?
Floating. What is floating? That's the generic term these days, but it's actually sensory deprivation. And what sensory deprivation is you basically put yourself into a box that's roughly the size of a closet.
It's the world's most perfect bathtub.
The world's most perfect
bathtub. Very non-intimidating.
Yeah, except with no light, no sound, and minimal tactile sensations. It's actually got 10 inches of water, and it's filled with 900 pounds of Epsom salts, which makes the water extremely buoyant. The water is heated to 93.5 degrees, which is the same temperature of the surface of your skin, so it makes it skin receptor neutral. And the whole idea behind sensory deprivation is, of course, to eliminate as much sensory input coming into your body as possible, which helps you generate really deep kind of relaxative, meditative states. And it's a very effective tool for a lot of different things, actually.
Yeah, it's a practice. It's like anything worth doing, you usually got to practice at it. You can't just... there's no magic pills out there. Anything that's really worth it, you kind of got to put the time into it. And for some people, it's on that first float, they kind of just drift off into nothing. And then other people, it's not till the 10th float where they kind of can sink in. And everyone's different. Every float is different. Every time you go in, it's, depending on what's going on that day and what's going on in your life at any given time, it's going to kind of let you check in with that and kind of feel it out. So. And we were getting a lot of comments like, what is floating, guys? Because we were just talking about it like everyone knew what it was. And, obviously that's not
So we start off by explaining what we're actually doing here.
And so
if you want, you can come check us out. Our website is www.floathouse.ca. And if you actually enter the promo code Yyoga, you can receive a 20% discount on a single float.
And with us always is Mr. Omid from Omega Point YouTube channel. We collaborate with him to produce the podcast here, so he's definitely the tech brains behind the scenes. And his YouTube channel is a very interesting YouTube channel. It creates these very inspirational videos that he edits and puts visualizations to, and the what's it called? The words. What do you call that stuff?
Kinetic typography.
Typography.
Some of them are like that.
That's basically when you hear the words, the words start flying out from the screen, and in order to read them as well. So it's a very impactful way of educating people. And so go check out Omega Point on YouTube, and his Facebook has a pretty big following as well. And you can see the latest and greatest creations from Omid. And today, we are very honored and excited to have Miss Lara Kozan here, the co-founder of Yyoga, the co-founder of Nectar Juicery, and she was on the Business and Vancouver's Top 40 Under 40 last December. So congratulations with that.
That's amazing.
Cool. Thank you.
And Lara is someone, we wanted to get somebody from the Yyoga family to come on here because both Andy and I have been a part of Yyoga. I went to my first Yyoga class in 2007, the fall of 2007. And when actually did Yyoga first kind of come to be in Vancouver?
The inception for the idea was 2006. It was about a year of putting it together and finding all the pieces and seeing exactly what it's going to look like.
Right.
And then it was after that, probably right when you first started, that we started rolling.
So it was right around that time. And I went to North Shore Elements at the time. Obviously, Nico and Chloe were the owners there at the time. And
well, North Shore was a little bit after, weren't they? Like when did the first one open?
The first ones were partnerships with existing studios. So the one in Whistler, which was previously Neo Alpine.
Right.
The one in Yaletown.
And was it called? What was it called before?
It was called Neo Alpine before.
What was the Yaletown one called?
Yaletown Yoga.
It was Yaletown.
Yaletown Yoga.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
And then just became Yaletown Yyoga, and
then North Shore was another one of those partnerships as well, right?
Yeah,
North Shore Elements.
Nico and Chloe, who were the partnership, didn't have an actual physical location, but Nico and Chloe have been teaching for quite a while and established a community without a roof, so to speak.
Right.
And those two, like Mike and I practiced North Shore Elements for years, and the feel of that North Shore Elements is probably one of the strongest senses of community out of any yoga studio I've ever been to.
Yeah.
Like they did an amazing job, and they're not there unfortunately right now. But that same kind of feeling, it kind of persists that they kind of installed there.
Yeah, actually, sorry.
Well, I think it's their love of the yoga, of the practice, and the people. Like that can't be bought and sold. It's like purely, like their hearts were just in it, and their legacy continues on even though they're not here. Right?
Yeah, no, it's true.
So there was the one in Whistler, and then the one in Yaletown, which was called Yaletown Yoga. Is that how you got the name Y Yoga? Did you just condense it down to Y Yoga?
Well, the other partnership was also Jason and Kelly at Flow, so I want to make sure I don't leave them out.
Okay, cool.
So they were also
one
of
the
the first.
Flow studio, though?
The Flow studio was where it is right now, except there were other businesses in the entire second floor, and they were at the very back of it. So they temporarily moved to another spot. We renovated the entire space, and then now it's all Y Yoga.
Yeah. Right.
But to your question about the name, the Y Yoga is, why would you do yoga? Why would you do yoga? Why would my dad do yoga? Why should everyone practice yoga? Probably similar to your floating. Like you guys really know in your hearts, like why it's really important for everyone on the planet to do this, to experiencing it. And, when Terry and I and the community who created, why yoga initially had it, was we just want people to practice yoga because everybody has their own reason why it's so important and how it'll affect their lives.
Right.
So that's
really interesting because I think that's such a great way just to pique people's interest in yoga, and especially back then, definitely wasn't as popular as it is now, or especially the last few years, how crazy yoga has exploded, especially in this city. So I guess education was probably a big challenge for you back then as well.
Definitely, and at the heart of what we were doing, because back then yoga wasn't accessible to people. It was something that was very, very weird. And I think one of the great things that you guys are doing with floating, that we did with yoga, that now we're doing with Juice, is making something that is wildly great for us accessible to people. And it can be accessible not to just like this exact one type of individual, but to all sorts of individuals. And then the world starts to change when we're all engaged in it.
That was definitely something we brought into when we were creating Float House, was trying to keep it pretty much like a blank canvas. And actually, I think I might have heard Terry say that. Terry McBride is obviously your co-founding partner.
Yes.
And he was speaking, I believe it might have been somewhere in Whistler at the yoga, what's it called?
Wanderlust?
Yeah, Wanderlust thing. And I saw him online, and he was saying how like why yoga is like it's a lot of white, and it's kind of like this is the canvas, and we don't want to let anyone else like just come here and you express yourself. You be the expression on the canvas. It was kind of what he was getting at. Yeah. And so we definitely had kind of incorporated that feel with our centers too. Like we do have some art on the walls and different design elements and things like that, but we definitely want to keep it fairly
neutral,
lower
I think.
Key, neutral. Yeah, exactly. Trying to keep it so that it's the stimulation comes from other sources, more internally derived.
Well, one of the amazing exercises that we did with Y Yoga is we walked into the studios after they were all done, and we looked around, and it's great sort of for any business to do, but to go, what can I take out? Like what is unnecessary? And, we do this with our lives, like as we get healthier and happier, we're like, well, what do I need to remove? And there's this constant
clearing out the clutter.
Yeah, clearing out the clutter and letting go. Yeah. And our businesses can be like that too, even as far as, too many, items on the front counter or too many pictures or whatever it is, but like what can be removed, and then you have what's essential. And then with what's essential, then your intention grows stronger.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Like just the whole concept of less is more, and if you get presented like with 1,000 different options of something, it's actually much harder to make a decision than if you have just 3. You know what I mean? And so that kind of concept just extrapolated into the space. I think that's a really good tool that people could utilize, because you don't want to have unnecessary things. Like that's just filling the space and clouding it and distorting the energy, if you will.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
That's very cool. And then obviously like Y Yoga just kind of, I don't know, like I think there's something synergistic about these groups, I guess, kind of coming together that really allowed it to flourish in Vancouver, especially. Like it kind of just grew, from our eyes, quite quickly and into what it is today. And how many locations are there now of Y Yoga?
9, and then Toronto we're opening. Open, pardon me.
Yeah, and Toronto opened last year.
Yes.
Cool. Very cool.
Last year.
Yeah.
How does that studio compare to the ones here? Is it where would you compare it to? Is it like a Flow?
Like a Flow.
Like a Flow.
Yeah.
And Toronto's different. Like so, it's built with 3-level floors and whatnot, but larger in size than say what's one of our smaller studios, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
North Shore, or pardon me, not North Shore, Whistler.
And on top of like having the convenience factor, you guys attracted some amazing teachers. Like you had so many great teachers come through the doors, and like you know, a lot of those teachers now have kind of like dispersed and gone on to other things. But you had such an amazing core group. You could go to any class at Yyoga, and it was just like you knew you were getting a great class every time.
Well, I think at the heart of like what I'm most passionate about is the experience on your mat. The studios, yes, we built them very beautifully. They're wonderful studios to go into, and that's just to make it accessible. But really, the most important thing is like, what's your experience on the mat? And the teacher, in the large part, inspires that at the beginning, and then you're also responsible for part of it too. But if you have that amazing teacher who can bring those pieces out or orchestrate it, so you have that, then then the real magic happens, and then people keep coming back, and then the community's built.
Yeah, all it takes is one positive experience in a class, a yoga class. And typically when you kind of just align with the energy of the teacher or just kind of whatever it is, and once you kind of have that, you're just like, I had no idea. You kind of just clicks for you, like just behind, and it's usually how you feel, like during, mostly after the class. You're just like, I feel great. Why do I feel so good?
For me, a lot of times I will resonate with certain teachers more than others too.
Totally.
So and the teachers would actually start getting their own followings, and they
yeah.
become like little mini celebrities in the community now.
Oh,
right?
Definitely.
And I found I would a lot of times pick my classes based on the teachers that I really like to go to.
Well, it's interesting because I think one of the initial ideas that I had for Yyoga is that I wanted there to be amazing teachers. I wanted it to feel like home. Like when you walked in, you kind of felt like you were going home.
Yeah.
Just that like nourished piece, and that people like who worked there really loved what they did. But the teacher thing I think is so important to have. And as students, we so it's two separate points. But as students, we follow a teacher, and then we eventually get to the point where we become the teacher. So it's less relevant. So now my practice is it used to be about the teacher. Now it's more about I have this time, therefore I go. And I don't even know sometimes whose class I'm walking into.
True. You make it your own.
And that's exactly what I do as well now.
So then it shifts, right? So,
Yeah.
in the beginning part, it's that to get that experience, but obviously like you're an experienced practitioner, so to speak, or yogi, that, it's more about the yoga than it is, but we all need that in the very beginning. And of course you still have your favorites. And,
sure.
like
there's different
Megan,
styles.
Megan Curry comes into town and I'm still crazy excited.
She's one of our
Yoga.
float ambassadors, actually.
Yeah.
Of course. Oh, great.
Yeah, and I used to go to her class consistently. And the one who I still go to, I haven't gone to in a couple months just because of being really busy, but Leave in Yaletown.
Yeah,
she was one of my first yoga teachers ever. I think I took a hot class with her. My first class was with you, actually, in Ontario. At the Moksha, you took me to I did one class out there, and I came back out here, and I joined at Yaletown. And I think my very first class back was with Leave, and I still go to her. I've been going to her classes for nearly 5 years now.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
super.
and
cool.
she's kind of replaced Megan because Megan's gone now, and then, it's just too bad. But
It's called the core crushing.
You go to Leave's class, and you come out, and you're just like dripping, and there's a
amazing.
Red
pool,
stuff.
and you're just like you're spent. Yeah. I love it. I love her classes.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
And that's another thing too, like for me, and the thing that's, kept me coming back really, other than all those things we just kind of talked about, was really the ability for me in my lifestyle to jump around. Like we live on the North Shore, yet I'm downtown quite a bit, and I'm all over the city. And oftentimes on a given day, I'll know I'm doing yoga, so I'll bring my gear with me, but I don't know when or where necessarily.
So you've
And
got
then
the
I just, I go on the phone, check the app, and it's like, okay, I think I can hit the 4 o'clock. So boom, I go hit that, and then you just show up. So that's quite often how I roll with it. I kind of decide the day of what
great.
actual class I'll get to, just because, at any given day or time, there's going to be something that will most likely fit in with what I need. So, and that's just, decreasing barriers for people to get in there, right?
Is that
That's
the
exactly the
intent?
point. So.
Did you used to teach Moksha yoga? Is that what I heard?
No, I never taught it.
That was my first class. That I ever
Oh,
went
with
to.
him. Okay. there we go.
Yeah. So I kind of introduced it
Okay.
to him, and same thing. Like once you kind of get that resonance after a class, that just makes you just feel different. It's unlike any other workout, really, because of the way you connect with your breath, the way you move in sequence, and the type of postures you do. Like a lot of people that if you don't do yoga, I'm still learning how to engage different parts of my body and like move. Like you're learning constantly with your body and yourself. And I've been doing it for 7 or 8 years now. It never stops. It's just this
Always a
constant
beginner, right?
discovery mode. Yeah.
Despite how long you've been practicing, it's great.
Yeah, exactly. So I've been going since 2007. 2006. Actually, yeah, 2006 was my first class ever.
That's great.
You know, and I've always said too, like I come from a kinesiology background, and I was a strength and conditioning coach. And so I've been into the resistance training, and we were both athletes in university, and pretty high in intensity training and stuff like that. But I always said if I was forced to do one modality of exercise for functional longevity in the future and just general health, if I was forced, I would have to be yoga, just because.
Awesome. That's really great.
That's how that's just for my body type and for how I feel in terms of taking care of myself. It's I don't know, it's really unrivaled in that regard. So
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Right. So you guys started off with, so you had the three. You had Flo, you had Whistler, and Yaletown, right?
Flo, Whistler,
North Shore.
Yaletown, and North Shore.
And North Shore
Yeah.
was the last one of that original group, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Those were all like really great community partnerships.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And then after that, you opened up South Granville.
We went out to Burnaby, Richmond,
Right. Yes.
South Granville, Kits. I think I'm like
Fur.
playing a piano. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wessex.
Yeah, I
And Toronto.
Right.
Toronto.
Cool.
Yeah.
I think
Very cool.
I think I got it all there.
Are there any more on the way that
There's
you can
always like
reveal?
some up our sleeve,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah.
we'll leave it at that. But
Yeah.
it's been, and this is one of those things. It's been really fun and cool, especially from some small business owners to watch a local company kind of grow the way we've done. And before all this, actually, I had a little coffee meeting with Terry because
great.
I was just because we were actually looking at doing a float center yoga studio combination because we did when we first started floating. I would very often go to yoga class, boot it home, and we had the float tank in my apartment, and I'd float right away, and I would always have my best floats after yoga
for
class.
sure.
So like, well, it's a natural compliment. But then when we were starting to look, we were working on the business plan and everything.
Well, actually, we got scared off by Yoga. We're like, we are not going head to head with Yoga.
We want to
That's
inspire.
crazy
We
at
want to
this point.
inspire.
I know, but it was just like part of it was simplification, though. It's just like, you know what? There's something
It's
that we can do
simplification.
just for floating. Like, let's just focus on this, become really good at that.
Yeah.
Yoga's kind of taken care of in this city. We don't, so in terms of getting into that dance, we're like, well, maybe we can just do something a little bit different and because we were looking at doing like 3 tanks in a yoga room or whatever, but we're like, let's just go 5 tanks.
But speaking of that, we're definitely inspired by Yoga,
Oh, great.
and we're kind of going for that same kind of convenience factor effect. We have 2 locations now, Gastown and Kitsilano, and we're probably going to go the franchising route. Actually, we are going the franchising route as of right now.
Okay, great.
And we're going to get a location up, hopefully by the end of the year in Surrey Langley.
Oh, great.
And we're also looking at North Shore too. So we want to have that kind of that convenience factor. I think it's so important, right? Removing barriers that prevent people from actually getting in there is huge.
Definitely, I am. I'm a big fan, and you spoke about it a little bit earlier. Like, if something's worth doing, it's worth making a practice.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I'm, committed to these days to talking about is like the practice that we each engage in, whether it's yoga, whether it's juice, whether it's floating. Like, what is your practice that helps you connect with love, first of all, but like that practice piece. And if you have one float house, it's not going to be able for everybody to practice every day or on a very,
Or
very consistent
consistently.
basis at that much. So, creating this way for people to really make it a practice versus a one-off thing that they do.
Yeah.
And then we start to see real change in the world because we're engaged in like this activity versus all these other things we could be doing. That
Yes. And
aren't
actually,
as good
we
for
talked
us.
about this quite a bit. When we actually have started talking about how floating is actually a form of yoga. As you know, yoga has 8 limbs. One of them is pratyahara, which is the withdrawal of the senses.
Yeah.
And part of that practice was actually going into caves, going into shalas, temples.
And there's even like postures where you block your
It's the
nose
first
and
one
your
I thought,
ears and your nostrils.
to get that sensory deprivation effect, so you can actually go inward more. And this is actually just a really, really refined version of pratyahara. So it's actually a little offshoot of yoga as well.
It absolutely is. That's great. That's a really good analogy.
Yeah.
I would say that was my experience in the tank too. Like,
Yeah.
it was very connected.
And that was your first time. So how was it for you?
I would definitely do it again.
Yeah.
I thought it was amazing. There's nothing like it. We hear the word sensory deprivation, and you're not quite sure what to expect.
Sounds a little bit scary.
It's true. Well, it's a very unique environment, right? It's hard to access that anywhere else in the world in that regard, So but it seems to be something that's been part of a lot of human cultures for a very long time. Like you're saying, whether it's using caves or temples would always have like very dark rooms or blacking out teepees, sensory deprivation. By taking away as much of the external world as you can, it forces you to go inwards and start, being connected with what's inside, and we obviously live in a day and age that's very externally orientated, through just the computers and just the lifestyle we have. And so, our culture doesn't really have that available in different regards. And, lots of things can do that, obviously, whether it's yoga or just seated meditation or floating. They can kind of, we're trying to get people to get connected with whatever's in themselves and to learn that aspect of themselves. And because that's where a lot of significant change begins. It starts from within. It's really difficult to have external factors to prompt really significant change.
Definitely, and I think you can evaluate anything, or at least like get excited about an experience. Like if it's a new, you probably have lots of like things and comments in your brain, but it's what were the benefits of the practice or whatever you engaged in afterwards. After my experience of the float, I stayed up much later than I usually do, and I had all this energy, and I was clear,
What time did
and
you
I was
float?
focused. I think it was like 2:00 in the afternoon.
Oh wow! So it wasn't like an 8 p.m. float.
It wasn't an 8 p.m. one. And then the next day I still felt, a little bit more clear and calm and grounded. Yeah. So I think you always look to the effects of what's happened to see what the practice actually did for you.
I personally try to avoid anything past 7 p.m. because same thing. It keeps me up almost. Like I get rested enough so I don't really fall asleep when I know I got to still be up by 6 a.m. the next morning. I'm like, shit, I can't be doing these 8 or 9 p.m. floats. But for some people, they do work, And that's the thing. Everyone's different.
I can never do a yoga class after 8 p.m. Otherwise,
unless it's a yin.
So
nice. You hit a yin.
The yin, yeah.
But, yeah.
Yeah, after my first float, that was one of the first benefits I actually noticed about floating was it actually helped me fall asleep at night. Because I felt that when I actually turned off the lights in my room, it reminded me of the darkness of the float tank. And I was able to just completely relax and fall asleep much more easily. And a lot of people actually report that after the first float is one of the first benefits they'll notice is they have an easier time falling asleep. And that's probably because it actually helps you reset your parasympathetic nervous system and your stress points.
Stress, yeah. I mean, that's the thing about yoga too is, stress management. That's like kind of, I think, a really hot thing with health and wellness right now is recognizing how detrimental stress is in people's lives, and then having non-pharmaceutical ways to deal with it. Yeah. That's a big thing. Is we can use the pharmacy of our body, the biochemistry of our body, if you breathe properly or move properly, and even just getting focused and centered and calm, we'll have these physiological changes within ourselves to deal with this chronic stress that we expose ourselves to.
Definitely.
Yeah. I think that's it's a huge thing that yoga's been addressing since it's been around, and it's funny to see how yoga was such a fringe activity. And now it's it is mainstream. I think it's safe to say that now. It's
my dad's practiced yoga. I think we're mainstream,
That's true, exactly.
Yeah. What do you think is the main thing that made it come out into the mainstream? Probably, I think a lot of it might have to do with why yoga, especially in this city.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, we've contributed to making that happen. Yeah. I definitely think so. There certainly was an uprising of, in North America, even in Europe, you're starting to see it a little bit more, maybe because some of our teachers are going over there. Yeah. In Asia, with Pure Yoga opening up. And I think people were ready. People were ready to let go of their stress. And it's pretty extreme, the benefits, of you do a class and you come out and you're like, what just happened? I feel amazing. Yeah. People were ready for a release, I think. So I think there's lots of things that contributed, but some great teachers and people's fierce commitment to getting more people to do practice.
Yeah. And what do you find is the biggest challenge to getting people to come out and try it these days, or getting people to stick with it?
They have something in their mind that it's not. Whether it was 10 years ago, whether someone hasn't practiced today, they have a conception of what they think it is. And often go and they're like, oh, that's totally not what I thought it was.
Right.
And then I think the realities of life too, people have busy lives, and they think to carve out an hour and a half to do a practice, because they don't know the benefits to their life at that point, because they haven't done it, they're not willing to invest the time.
Yeah.
So getting that commitment, what's been actually amazing is with Nectar, I sometimes call it yoga in a bottle, because there's been people I've been working on for years to do a yoga class, and some of them, a lot of them are practicing, but not all of them. I can put a juice in front of them, and they feel it in their body.
Yes.
They're like, they can, like it's like coffee or alcohol. It hits your bloodstream, and you're like, oh, I'm getting it, but it's not.
Well, you're drinking something that's alive.
But it's vitality. And they're like, what is that? And it's like a yoga class. They feel vital. And they're like, I feel vital. What is that? Yeah. And then maybe then I'm more likely to get them to go to a yoga class or some, potentially a float, because they're willing to see, like, they know what good feels like.
They have that experience, right? And that's a cool thing too. Like we've actually, you mentioned Nectar Juicery, which is you're also the co-founder of, and we at Float House have actually we're going to be working with you guys to retail some of your product, which is super cool for us. And because to be honest with you, there is nothing better than either whether it's after a yoga class or after a float, putting something amazingly healthy like that, that's full of life force energy into your body. Because you just kind of went and got connected with yourself. You're hypersensitive. You're kind of, or you flushed out all that disconjointed energy with the yoga class, and then you go and nourish yourself with like this extremely high quality, food product. And that's when you have that feeling, you just like, it's crazy how good you feel. And the paradox, even though you're committing, let's say 90 minutes or an hour to a yoga class or a float, by committing that time and by the benefits you gain from it, will actually make you more productive, so you actually end up probably better spending your time by using that time for that exercise or that practice, and then bringing that new vitality back to your regular life, your job, your family, whatever it is.
Exactly.
And so it's a paradox. Like, yes, you're committing the time to this, but it's actually going to give you
a multiplier,
quality.
right?
Yeah,
definitely.
It's one of these exponential things,
Yeah, we've been talking to a lot of different people about how to remove barriers from floating. And there's actually other float centers opening up in this city now, which we were a little bit, first we were a little bit concerned about, but, we were told that it's not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, it could be a good thing to get more awareness out there. And that our biggest competition isn't other float centers. Our biggest competition is actually just getting people off the couch and getting them in here to actually do something.
Yeah, definitely.
Lack of awareness.
Definitely.
So the whole education background is huge. And I mean, you guys at Yyoga have a pretty large team, like a corporate team, and like a lot of different sectors and divisions. And you seem to be able to recruit pretty high caliber professionals, to help you out. And did that something that just kind of happened organically as you grew, or was this like a very planned kind of progression that Yyoga did as it grew? I
feel like attracting great people, or even people that are like willing to say yes to ideas, it definitely comes, from what we're being. But also, I can remember sitting down and, talking about, going into specific locations, and, realtors were hesitant because they're like, oh, yoga, I'm pretty sure that's not going to work. Right.
Well, we've been there.
That, and to kind of, and now I think if we were talking to a realtor, they really understand that the benefit of why yoga would bring to their community, even, in a building complex being the amenity space, because they know that will attract the right people, which is West 6. So I think it's a matter of it's certainly a progression, but if you're, firm in what you stand for, and, even with Nectar, there's, we're young and growing, but the people that we're attracting to it, because people, believe what we believe, and, want to create, work that's passionate for them and grow that way. So I think that's...
Well, it's being part of something that is a higher truth almost. You're like, this is a good thing for people. It's a good business to be a part of because of that, and, that we've kind of had that too, is like a lot of people just start coming to us, we have to actually turn people away. Like, sorry, we don't have any positions available, and that's a great sign. I think just in terms of society in general, like you get people that they're recognizing these different positive, influential companies, and they want to go work for them, and versus like, where can I make more money necessarily? So
definitely people are driven more by passion, I think, these days. They've done this other stuff, and they're like, I just want to
it's
contribute.
Kind of realizing, like, you've seen those TED Talks about the pursuit of happiness and what actually makes you happy. And after a certain, I think there's actually studies showing after a certain level of income.
It's like $75,000. I think Harvard did a study on it.
Right.
After $75,000 and after having certain needs met, met, you're not actually going to increase your level of happiness at all.
Financially.
Financially.
From financial ways.
Yeah.
So yeah, but and then tell us more about Nectar. Like Nectar Juicery is your new brainchild, your new baby.
Yeah.
And how did that all get started?
It's with partner Troy Holmes, and it comes out of our passion, and we're just really passionate about having people connect that food is healing.
Yeah.
Period. And the tool that we use is juice.
Right.
You know, we both have our own personal experiences of what the juice did for us. Mine was a home birth, go sideways. I desperately wanted to be the advocate for home birthing, and I had my second child, and had it go a little bit sideways. Baby's healthy, and I'm sitting here obviously healthy now, but it was a challenge to find my vitality again that I was so used to. And I did that largely through studying Ayurvedic medicine. And largely through like making juice for myself. So the smoothie that I would used to have in my Vitamix with all my greens in it, I wasn't able to digest it because my immune system was so worn down. And I don't think you need to like have a health crisis to have that happen. Like some people just can't digest that. Even having a baby is challenging. So I think you don't have to go to such extremes that I do to recognize this. But it was that I wasn't able to digest something that I was pretty easily able to before. So I took out the kale and I put in spinach, and I took out the apples and put in oranges, Ayurvedically aligned it, made it into a juice. And all of a sudden I was like, wait a second, now this is like one of the key pieces that's helping me find vitality and feel better.
Right.
Now, how did you get the knowledge of the Ayurvedic diet? Like, is that something you've studied for a long time?
Why don't you explain what is Ayurvedic medicine? Where does it come from? What is it in a nutshell?
Largely, it's science and medicine of yoga. It's very founded on. It's very in line with nature. So it follows the seasons, it follows the times of days, it very aligned that way, and it has an understanding of many things, and most people typically know it as, you've got 3 body types. But there's actually, many more layers beyond that, but that's kind of, generally an understanding, but it's a way of life. And it's becoming, again, something that was traditionally very inaccessible. It's becoming more accessible, and actually all of our juices for Nectar are Ayurvedically aligned.
Cool. And it seems like Ayurvedic medicine, it's a very holistic based philosophy or way of addressing health and wellness, right? On a lot of different levels. So it's not just looking at the biology and like, this is the symptom, so let's treat the symptom. It's more like, let's look at the whole thing energetically, psychologically, emotionally, physically, of course, too. And then, like you said, like and then the environment, how the environment we live in will dictate what types of food we should be eating. Like if you live in a cold, wet, dark, damp climate, you should probably be eating a certain type of food versus a hot tropical environment, right? So it's really
very much so
broad encompassing in that regard. And so all your juices are kind of based on this theme then? Yeah,
so all of our juices, to start off with, they're 100% organic, and that's organic without exception, even when cucumbers are really expensive.
They are. Why are they so expensive? Why are cucumbers ridiculously expensive? I mean...
Yeah.
It's like $4 a cucumber.
I hear you.
It's nuts.
I hear you.
But you gotta get them.
You gotta get them, right? And for juice, we fundamentally believe that it needs to be organic. So it's 100% organic. It's unpasteurized. It's cold pressed. So it's never been heated. And then it's formulaic, which is the piece that we've spoken about a little bit. So they're all Ayurvedically aligned. They've all been designed by a naturopath, a functional medicine doctor, holistic nutritionist, and then a mixologist to help them taste yummy.
Whoa.
Because they have a 3 vegetable to 1 fruit target ratio.
Cool.
So we want it to be about nourishment than a yummy juice, even though our juices are really yummy.
Yeah, obviously, because if you have a juice or a smoothie that's all fruits, it's not horrible for you, but it's still a lot of fruit, a lot of sugar in there.
A lot of sugar. Like nobody needs to have, that much apple juice.
No, you need to have.
I had one of your green juices, and I can't remember exactly which one it was, but I've had a couple other green juices in the city, and this one tasted amazing. Like I enjoyed drinking this one. I don't remember which blend it was exactly. Tori gave it to me, but it was amazing. I was just like, this is pleasurable.
Well, it's made with love, so there we go.
Yeah.
And probably your body too resonates with the 3 vegetable to 1 fruit. Like you probably actually really enjoyed that there was less fruit in it. Yeah. And because a mixologist has worked with us, we test every batch. We have them, recipe aligned to build each recipe, and we're very specific about it. So when it actually ends up tasting good, it's made with love, but it's also made with a lot of technique too.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So
why don't you kind of go into, because there is different types of juicing out there, right? So you said you guys are cold pressed juice versus what are the other types of juicing, and what's the differences between the different types?
Yeah, I mean, there's almost a scale. So we've got what we are 100% organic, cold pressed, unpasteurized on this side, and then you probably have, on the side, water that's got sugar flavoring in it, but everything else is sort of in between, concentrate. There's like your Minute Maids. There's the ones that you buy at Safeway that are a little bit better. That actually some of them are probably even saying cold pressed on them, but chances are, if they're sitting on a shelf, They're pasteurized. So anything that sits on a shelf for 30 days, it's not the same.
It's becoming basically sugar water.
It's becoming sugar water at that point. And then you get a little bit better, like you've got your Juggo juices that get a little better. And then you even have, your other companies that are probably, trying to do cold pressed, but still pascalizing it.
What does that mean?
So they use cold pressure instead of hot pressure.
Okay.
So, it's still extending the shelf life. Okay. So one of the things that's, hardest for our business is that we by choice give our juices a 3-day shelf life. It actually has a 5-day, but nutritionally, after 72 hours, the enzymes and minerals begin to diminish.
Down, yeah.
So we've, by choice, given it 3 days. It would have 5, but that's because our intention is nourishment. So it's that piece of it. But anything, shorter of that, if it can live for 30 days, it's just not about health.
Right.
So what is it about the cold press process that makes it better?
If you have cold pressed and if you heat it, say like you go to Juggo Juice and, great juices, but they
centrifuge thing.
They heat their juice.
It's heated. Huh?
Yeah, so the live minerals and enzymes get heated and begin to break down. So unless you drink that juice with like seconds, it's not going to be.
You're not getting the full.
You're not going to be able to
benefits.
access the health benefits of it.
Right.
But if it's cold pressed, it's never been heated. It's ultimately like eating this much fruit, but not having to sit and consume it for the hours it would take to do that.
Exactly.
Or vegetables.
And cold pressed juice seems to be kind of a pretty hot thing right now. Like I hear about it popping up kind of everywhere. Is it like a trend that's big everywhere in North America, or has it got like little pockets of concentration where it's more popular?
I would definitely say North America wise, even Europe, it's starting to begin that way. And it's very similar, being in the juice business to the yoga business years ago. Like, when we opened Yyoga, there was another 10 studios that we'd hear about every day. I'm an exaggerator, but seemingly that way.
That's how we feel at this
Yeah,
point.
that's exactly where we're at right now.
That exactly. Like, how could there be another one, right?
Yeah.
And I feel that same way. I just drove past one here and I was like, what the heck? Like, there's another one, right?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And I also fundamentally believe, and it's something, my business partner, Terry, on the yoga side says, like, high tides float all boats. So, we're like excited to have those people join because then, our mission actually is to have people, be nourished and healthy. And if they choose our juices, great. And if we have a whole army of people doing it, even better.
Yeah, that's a huge point. I think, just going from a mindset of love and abundance and not fear and scarcity.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
If we want to impact people's lives, that will ultimately impact the community and societies and even the country and, dare I say, the world that we live in. That's what we want. We want people to be doing these things, period, versus ours. And all you can really control is within your realm of influence, anyways. So wasting energy worrying about somebody else is just futile.
And
that's no point.
That's where we're at right now. It's been really interesting with floating because I kind of feel like a similar thing happened with yoga and a similar thing happened with juicing, and now a similar thing's happening with floating.
Definitely.
Before we opened, there was maybe 2 big companies in the States that were doing floating. That was Float On in Portland, and then another one in Arizona called True Rest. And then we opened up, and I think a lot of people watched us. I know a lot of people watched us.
For sure they did.
And within 6 months of us opening, we were hearing of centers popping up all over the place. And now we know of there's going to be an additional 5 centers in this city. And now they're popping up in pretty much every city across Canada. There's multiple in each city in Canada.
And it's amazing. And, probably at the root of it, like your intention is probably, to get people floating, but to change the world. And, you guys are going to do that, but there's going to be other people, like we need everyone joining in.
Sure.
So, it's hard to like sit and say, I want to change the world, but I'm going to be the only person doing it.
There's a big world with a lot of problems too.
Yeah, right? Like there's space for everybody. And it is that, like, I come from love. I come from abundance.
Yeah. Yeah.
then it's good, right? You know?
One thing that we think a lot about too is how we feel like there's certain spheres of influence, and we feel like yoga and eating raw organic foods and meditation and what we're doing, floating, all kind of fall into that same sphere.
Definitely.
And I feel like that sphere is growing, and that it's such a positive influence on people, and it changes people.
Changes people, definitely. Oh, for sure.
It's changed me, that's for sure.
Yeah. You just,
Well, the power of transformation, anyone can change.
it's true.
Anyone, you're never too late, too old, too sick,
Yeah. And that's the important thing to empower people with, and for whatever reason, there's a huge chunk of people that maybe are stuck and like don't feel empowered that they can do it, whether they think, oh, I can't afford this, or I'm too old, too out of shape, or like the human body and the human mind are the highest forms of organic technology that exists. Like this is literally, as far as we know, in terms of the universal development, the peak of the universal evolution is the human brain. Like think about that. That's a really empowering, impactful thing. Like wow, and we can marvel at nature all we want, but we are part of that process too. And don't sell yourself short. Is basically what I'm saying. Like, go out there and just do what you can in whatever realm you can, because once you start getting that little first domino of change falling over, and it's going to push the rest, you're going to have, you'll surprise yourself.
Definitely.
And
I always like to ask, like, what is your practice? What is your practice? What do you practice on a daily basis? And that will determine
you have a practice,
the space of like the world you live in.
Yeah. Do you practice watching television all the time?
Exactly.
And
that's
eating,
your practice, right?
Pop or drinking pop and potato chips, or
because it's going to lead to this outcome.
I love potato chips, though.
I know.
I do love potato chips.
They're delicious. Can you guys maybe make like a all organic, like healthy potato chip as well?
What, dehydrate some?
Oh yeah.
Some sea salt, some pink Himalayan sea salt. Hey, maybe there's an idea there. Because we use garnet yams, so maybe you could have.
How many flavors of juice do you have?
Let's see. There's probably close to 20 now.
Whoa. Holy smokes.
And because our cleanse, so we have the most amazing cleanse, but it's all individualized. So you'll start off with a consultation for 15 minutes with a holistic nutritionist,
Cool.
and then you'll determine what your health goals are. And so you'll figure out if it's a 3-day, 5-day, and then you'll figure out your cleanse. So it's not just one size fits all sort of thing, which is why we have, more juices. Plus we're also in corporate locations too, and we change their juices out once a month.
How often do you cleanse?
Do I cleanse?
Yeah, did you? Yeah.
At least a quarter.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then I've gotten in the habit, actually, like what's your practice? In doing a Monday cleanse. So once a week, every Monday, I'll do a cleanse.
Nice.
And then, throw a couple in here and there. But
I did my first juice cleanse last year.
Okay.
I gotta say, the first couple of days were pretty tough.
they can be.
And I think part of it was caffeine withdrawal.
You did a 7-day, right?
I did the 7-day.
That's pretty big
Well,
right
see,
off the bat.
if I could guess your nature, you're like, I'm a yes, and I'm going to jump into the deep end. Some people start with 3, and it's a bit easier.
Yeah.
But 7, I commend you on it.
I'm just doing 7.
That sounds like, from what I know.
Actually, it's a funny thing that for the first 2 days, I felt really tired. I just felt kind of weak. I had the headaches probably from not drinking coffee. And then by day 3, it was a little bit better. And day 4, I started feeling good. And I started, actually, the one thing I noticed the most is I have a lot of like respiratory stuff. Like I have a lot of like this mucus or congestion.
Yeah.
And one thing I noticed by day 4 and 5, like I was doing some boxing and stuff at the time, and I was just working on the heavy bag, and I could just go. Like it was crazy. Like I was just breathing like so clear. It was awesome. And then by like day 5 and 6, I was like, I don't even need to go back to regular food anymore. I can just drink juice all the time.
It's true.
That's great.
Yeah,
that's really great.
I just got back from a retreat where part of it was a very clean eating diet, and I was telling these guys last week on the podcast how much that
the senior citizens diet, no salt, no sugar, no.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah, totally. And then just fresh fruits and vegetables and no.
We should probably all be on the senior citizens diet though.
Yeah. I mean, really, we don't need that much sugar and salt in our diet.
We don't.
Which is another story, probably a whole other topic.
And the fact that every meal was like that clean and fresh and cooked that day and like nothing preserved. you feel so much better, you know, like, and that's how we're supposed to feel. You know what I mean? It's amazing how our food has evolved into this, you know, hyper pasteurized and additives and preservatives, and you know, you go in the grocery store and most of the stuff I go in there, I'm like, I don't want to eat most of this stuff. You know,
You had my experience I had yesterday. I walked in the grocery store. I'm like, that's not food.
Yeah.
Huh, that's not food either. That's not food either.
Yeah, that's a box. It looks like I can build a little playhouse with my niece or something.
It's a toy.
Yeah,
It's not food.
So
If it lasts for
Food
years,
courts
it's
feel the
probably
same
not
too
the best thing to
in
eat, right?
malls.
Exactly.
Yeah, when you go to food courts in a mall, like it's crazy. Like what can you eat there?
Yeah.
It's not food.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So, but that's like the predominant choices out there, you know. And many times when you're in a rush or you're out there, you're like, okay, I didn't prepare, I didn't plan, so you got to just grab what you can. And you know, not only is it kind of expensive to do that, but also it's, you know, it's not good for you, you know. And if you haven't really had that experience of, you know, just by what you're eating affecting how you feel, go try it. Do a cleanse or do something, because you'll surprise yourself, you know. So.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, you know, if it lasts a long time, right? Like we've actually shortened our shelf life.
Yeah.
You know, we
better.
could keep it at 5 days,
Right.
And it's actually like easier for us, and we
Sure.
probably
Pushing
sell
it a little
more in
bit.
the, you know. But we've purposely, you know, pulled it back because people aren't eating things that are alive anymore. Is the challenge. So
Yeah.
we want to be that vehicle where they can have that.
Right. So you guys have your cleanses available online and things like that?
We
You can order
will
them?
in a couple of days,
Okay,
and then
cool.
otherwise it's just hello@nectarjuicery.com.
Awesome. And where else in the city can people get if they want to just pop in a place? Do you have any other, like all the Yyogas,
All
obviously?
the 4 Yogas, so the
Okay.
Flow, Yaletown, Kits, and North Shore sell them.
North Shore does?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Nice.
All right.
Yeah,
mental
definitely.
note. And Float House will be very soon as well,
Very
which
soon.
is
Yep.
cool. So the Kitsilano and the Gastown locations. Is there anywhere else that you can get your
Well,
juice
you'd
at?
others have to work at Hootsuite or Mobify. They get corporate juice delivered to them.
Oh, wow.
So we show up with like 12 liters, 2 kinds of juice on a weekly basis, sometimes twice a
Hootsuite's
day.
awesome.
It's like, honestly, I would work there just because.
I actually just saw they were ranked, I think, number 10 out of the top 10 places to work in Vancouver recently. There's like some sort of poll somewhere. That,
I would definitely think so.
Yeah.
Like they're so innovative and they're beautiful new office space. Like they're doing really amazing things in their space, and
Cool.
juice is one of them.
Yeah.
So, you know, we bring juice and people understand, you know, the value of cold pressed juice. So
yeah.
people are like, they're lining up for it, and it's such an amazing thing for a company to offer because they're offering their employees vitality and they're getting less sick days and they're people more excited. People are showing up. Like quotes we had was, I show up early on Monday morning just to get the juice because I don't want to miss it. Right? So
That's amazing.
You know,
get out of bed. I gotta go.
I gotta go, and then they're at work, right?
Yeah,
So it's
that's
just
true. And that's another thing too. Like I imagine it's probably challenging for you is to have you know, people are like $9 for juice. You know, like how, or $8 or whatever the price point is. They're, you know, they're not cheap because you said they're organic. They're very manually intensive. The shelf life is minimal. Like there's a lot that goes into it. So it's probably a pretty big barrier for you guys. Is like how to you know, teach people that this is valuable.
But at the
you
same
know?
time, though, I think that people are seeing the value in it already. Like you see you see so many juice companies popping up already,
Sure.
and people are realizing like this product's definitely worth the money.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I think when coffee became $5, you know, when Starbucks made it $5, everyone kind of, you know, raised an eyebrow. And people, yes, I think are getting cold pressed juice. There's one really great video that I want to do with Tori and I walking around, you know, Whole Foods or, you know, another amazing grocery store and buying all the vegetables that we put in one of our juices,
a great
and then
idea.
going home and pressing it, and then what do you do with the waste? You know, it's unlike a smoothie that's just like a little bit easier to make, and you know what to do with the remains of it. Juicing is a couple of different steps.
Sure.
You know, it's expensive, so you know, yes, our juices are $10, but if you tried to make it at home, it'd be $20.
Right.
Factor in your time, shopping, whatnot.
right.
Like,
And the fact
so,
that you guys can buy in these bulk, it actually brings down the cost. Like
Yeah.
you can like, well, we're gonna buy, you know, 300 organic cucumbers instead of me buying 4 that cost me, you know, $49 or something. But you know, so but the
Exactly.
fact that you guys have that purchasing power, you know, and takes away the work and the time. Yeah, it's when you break it down. I think that'd be an amazing video to show people, like, you know, well, this is actually how much it costs if you're going to do it by yourself, or whatever the point was, right?
Exactly. And I think people are looking for, people, invest in vitamins and in their health. I think people are also more willing to invest in their health on a daily basis. But then it's also, really you're saving money because if you're preventing,
Oh, what exactly? You're preventing potential potential illnesses down the road, right?
Yeah, so the healthier
You're
we are
taking care of yourself
now,
you're investing in your
the
health.
less we have to invest later.
Yeah.
So it's just amortize that.
So what would you say, what is your overall vision? What's the big vision for Nectar?
The overall vision, I would like to see it certainly across Canada. Starting with Vancouver, I'd like to see, it accessible. It was very similar to the intentions with Yyoga, is we wanted to make yoga accessible. I want juice to be accessible. So whether you have juice delivered to your home or one of the partners that business partners we partner with and pick it up there, I want you to go to work and have your company, or you partially pay for it. So I want you to have it at home. I want you to have it at work. I want you to trip over a location because it's going to be in between here and work, where you pop in and you pick what you're going to have to juice based on how you're feeling. I'm feeling a little bit tired today. I would like XYZ juice.
Right.
And so you're really using it for healing. So starting in Vancouver, I'd like to see that, and then probably go to Toronto and then book in.
Yeah, and merge Canada through those two bridging points. And that's something too, the nice thing about, a good yoga class or a properly made bottle of juice or whatever, or just one float. For a lot of people, even just the one time trying it, like you said, when you have that juice and you feel that vitality, it kind of makes the sale for you a little bit,
Definitely.
It's just about getting it into people's mouths and getting them to drink it is what you got to do, because once they feel it, most people can they recognize the justification of it, so.
And I think you asked big vision, and I feel like there's a bigger mission, for me, beyond yoga, beyond juice, for even Tori as well too, that we want to inspire people to health and happiness through education, and however that looks. And both Tori and I speak publicly to have people really connected to what brings them alive, what's their practice and these pieces. So as an overall vision, I would just like to see people healthier and happier.
Yeah.
And how do we do that? What is your practice
that's great vision.
Takes you there?
Yeah. That's really cool. Well, we'll jump into that vision as well. We'll jump into that bubble.
Well, I think so, right? We're all on the same page, right?
Yeah. And that's why we wanted to align with companies like Yyoga and Nectar and the local communities around here too. People, great local people coming together to produce things that they're super passionate about. And if Vancouver's an amazing city, an amazing community that we're all very, very fortunate to be a part of, and it's very exciting. I feel like the entrepreneurial spirit in Vancouver is really strong, and the public loves it, and the people that are obviously doing it are in love with it. So it's just a lot of momentum going in that direction. It's very awesome.
It's interesting you use the word too, you talk bigger vision, you use the word people love it, and love, I see your business and businesses that are aligned, they're aligned from, and I've been doing yoga and meditating long enough that I'm allowed to say this, they're aligned with love, and they're leading from a place of love, and we're creating more love. That's just what we're doing here. Yeah. Yes, the details are different. Yours is floating. This is yoga, juice, whatever. But that's what we're inspiring.
It's true. If you're going to strip it down to its core,
I dare say it. I'm going to use the L word.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you from Vancouver originally, or
Saskatchewan? Actually,
Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
Okay. So what is it about? We're transplants as well from Toronto, Mississauga, actually. And it's funny because when we moved out here, everything kind of shifted for us. Do you think that there's something about Vancouver that inspires all of this?
It's interesting what that question brought up was when I moved here, I had not a ton of rhyme or reason. And, when I was that young, you don't necessarily do, you just sort of follow your heart. But I said that the air smelled better out here. Yeah. And not that the air smells bad in Saskatchewan, because I love where I'm from and my family there. But there was something about, whether it was just my sense of this is the right spot for me, or, but there was something just about being in Vancouver that woke me up, that I think wakes a lot of people up. Yeah. And it's our connection to nature and, all this weird stuff that we do, right?
Sure, I think you're right. I think the fact that we have this gigantic ocean blowing in fresh air, these massive mountains with trees literally acting as a natural air filter, air purification system for us. It just funnels down from Grouse Mountain, and we wake up every morning, just goes for a wave of fresh air in our face. We're like, all right.
Not everybody gets that.
No, you don't. And they get our exhale. No, you breathe it down from west to east. You're like, it's not that bad. But
Toronto's pretty bad.
I hear
in the summertime now.
Yeah, it's brutal. It's brutal.
The air quality advisories they have in the summer, you can't even go outside. They say don't go outside.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's broken.
Yeah.
That needs to change.
Yeah.
You know, everyone's got to get on the electric car bandwagon. You know, get your Teslas,
Yeah.
get your Nissan Leafs.
Yeah. I prefer Tesla over Nissan Leaf, personally.
A little cooler.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, those things are pretty badass.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, you want to wrap it up, or do you want to?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Do you have anything else that you want to share? Anything else you want to get out there about Nectar, about Yyoga?
I feel like we covered a lot today. So
Yeah.
Well,
so-
thank you so much for coming on. We have if you want to get in touch with Nectar or Yyoga or Lara. Lara's all over the social media, so we've got Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram with Lara Kozan. It's Kozan. It's her last name, Lara, not Laura. It's Lara. So get her right, people. Nectar's on Nectar Juicery, so Nectar.
Yes.
Nectar, just like the flowers. Juicery at Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well. So hunt them down. And Yyoga. If you haven't come across Yyoga, then you're obviously not really online at all. But they're on Facebook and Twitter as well. So thanks again so much. This was a lot
Thank
of
you for
fun.
having me.
Very
It's great.
cool.
It's an honor. Thank you.
Yeah.
Honored.
And go for yoga class, go get a juice, and come for a float.
It's a pretty good. That's the best day.
Combination. So thanks again, Omid, for all your help. Omega Point YouTube channel, and obviously if you want to come for a float, floathouse.ca. And until next time, next week, to whatever is.